Hello everyone, it's Paul and welcome to another installment of my Blackrock Foundry raid guides. In this video I'll be covering the Iron Maidens encounter on the heroic difficulty. The Iron Maidens is our token council fight, and as such the bosses will have independent health pools and have multiple phases which your raid will need to handle. The longest part of this fight, and the part of the fight that kind of makes it an endurance fight, is this initial phase. This will happen while the bosses are from 100% to 20% health, and there will be an intermission phase when one of them will go to the boat, and that phase happens at the 1 minute mark, the 420 mark, and the 740 mark during the fight. The boss with the lowest health will go to the boat, and each boss can only go once. During this video, I'll cover each ability and the way that we have chosen to counter it. I will cover the boat phases, especially the ones that involve the tanks going up onto the boats themselves. And I will talk about the final phase, which is actually triggered when one of the bosses hits 20% health. As far as positioning goes, you want your ranged and your healers to be spread out along the wooden part of the encounter area. And you want to tank the bosses right here where we have this green marker near the front of the room. If possible, the tank that is tanking Marak should try to keep her a little bit separate from the others so it is easy to intercept Blood Ritual. Alright, and since this is the way that the timing has worked out, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the boat phases. The one that we choose to do first is Marak the Blooded, so we forced her to go onto the boat, and what she does is she summons this deckhand named Blackrock. And the only thing he does is he melees your tank, and he will drop a blood pool under the feet of every member that is on that boat. I would recommend that the tank that goes up here rolls their cooldowns relatively slowly, and everybody needs to be aware of where the blood pools are going and how you are choosing to move the boss around them. The way we do this is we kind of draw a big old dick shape in blood here on the boat, and he usually ends up dying right about the time we get even with the position where our elemental shaman is right now. The team that you sent up to the boat is going to consist of 6 members. Typically, we recommend that you balance this out with about 2 ranged, 2 melee, a healer, and a tank. And in the phase that does not require a tank, send up another ranged DPS. When the named mob on the boat dies, you will be able to click bombs at the far end of the boat. That is the end of the boat that is opposite of the way I'm facing now. When this bomb is clicked, it'll start a channeled cast, and when that cast finishes, the dreadnought will explode and you will be blown back over to the main encounter area. The person clicking that bomb should learn to time it so that you land at the main encounter area when there are no bombs on the ground. I go ahead and cut to another piece of footage that I had so that I can show you what it's like when Enforcer Sorka is the one that goes on the boat. When you get up here as the tank that is tanking Enforcer Sorka, you'll want to go ahead and tank Gorak as soon as possible. The other 2 mobs do not actually have a threat table. Now what we do wrong here is that we do not stack up behind the tank. You will see our priest healer fruitlessly yelling at us to stack up, but he's Canadian and we can't understand French, so it's really hard to follow his instructions sometimes. But the reason you want to stack up behind the tank is because Deadly Throw is an ability that is cast at a random player, and it should be intercepted by the tank to mitigate the damage that it does. Your boat team should focus on killing Gorak as fast as possible while cleaving off on the other adds. Now during Admiral Garan's boat phase, that's the one I don't actually have footage of, your boat team is actually going to consist of 5 DPS and 1 healer. Everybody's going to get up there, you're going to spread around in a circle, and you're going to prioritize interrupts to interrupt the battle medic's earthen barrier and protective earth casts. During that phase, you will want to be killing Uktar. Go ahead and just DPS him down, and don't worry about the medic other than to interrupt his casts. The order with which you send the bosses up to the boat is entirely up to you, but we recommend doing Marak, then Enforcer Sorka, and then Admiral Garan. The first ability that I would like to talk about is Blood Ritual. Blood Ritual will target either ranged or melee DPS. I don't think I've ever seen it hit a healer, but it is possible that it could do that. The target of the ability will have a squiggly red line pointing to them and should run to a predetermined spot in the encounter area. The reason for this is that Blood Ritual will have a large damage component that happens to the person closest to the boss in the line towards the target of the ability. This means that the tank that is tanking Marak should always intercept the Blood Ritual little blood squirt cast. Also, real quick, that straight red line, that is called penetrating shot. That is a very important ability in the fight, and your raid should be prepared to handle it a multitude of ways. Penetrating shot will always choose either a ranged member of the raid or a healer, and it will draw a straight red line to that person. The what I'll call default way of handling this is to have as many people as possible stack in that red line. This will split the damage and allow the person that was targeted to not hug the floor. Another ability coming up here shortly is called Rapid Fire. Admiral Garan will select a random raid member and start putting down a circle that will chase that player slowly. That circle will obviously explode after a little bit of time, and the person with the debuff should just go ahead and kite it around the stone slabs that are around the edges of the room. You should also note that rapid fire happens in the melee often, and if that is the case, the melee targeted with it should call out over mumble or vent that melee need to look out, because there's a lot going on under the bosses and it can get a little bit difficult to see. And now we've come to the most difficult part of the fight as far as personal responsibility goes. These bomb phases are initially very overwhelming, and it is really easy to lose track of what's going on and get one shot or two shot by one of these bombs. However, once you figure the phase out, it's actually very straightforward, and avoiding the damage becomes very, very simple. Each wave of bombs will have 2 launches of time delay fused bombs. So here's the first one. And I will go ahead and get right on that edge. So here's how my thought process works before this. First bomb, get right on the edge. Once that lands, I go to that bomb. Alright, so that bomb's going to explode now. I move to this one. The other bomb exploded, so that area is now safe. Now I'm going to go over this again. Here comes the first bomb. I'm going to find the edge of one that's close to me. Then I'm going to be ready to move into that circle and stand on that bomb. Now I'm going to move to another bomb that I've picked out, wait for the other one to explode, and then move back to the one that just exploded. This just takes practice, that's all it is. Now I should note that because we have Garan down here on the floor, there's also penetrating shots going out, and the way that we handle this in this particular phase is with a Paladin Blessing of Protection. The good thing about Bop is that it actually removes the ability altogether. The same thing goes for Priest Invisibilities, Hunter Feign Deaths, and abilities like that. Now, you can also ice block it, but that doesn't get rid of the line, so there is still a danger that other people will get hit by it, so that is not recommended. Now, the other ability that will start coming up here, and it gets cast by Marak the Blooded, is called Blood-Soaked Heartseeker. Blood-Soaked Heartseeker will target 3 players, and those players need to do their best to get away from each other. The reason for this is that the Heartseeker does damage based upon the distance that it travels. So this takes into account the distance that the first person hit is from the boss, and it takes into account the distances between that first person hit and the next subsequent people that the ability hits. This ability should be handled by having the 3 people with the debuff spread out as far away as possible. Now, when it happens here, it's coming up pretty shortly, you'll see one of our warlocks actually yell something out in demonic. When it happens, I'll emphasize it and just watch the movement that these guys have. So there it is, there's a fair amount of a cast time to it. The 3 of them spread out, it goes out to the warlock, then to our paladin, and then crosses the entirety of the room to the person that was here in the bottom right corner. The other ability that happens throughout the fight is called Blade Dash. You just need to keep the range spread apart 8 yards. It's kind of a non-factor ability that doesn't really do much other than unavoidable damage on the raid. Like I said before, this entire part of the fight is just an endurance phase. It's testing you to see if you can get all of your people to the 20% mark alive. Now, as you do this phase, you figure out little tricks, like our rogue here is going to stay in melee range, but at the same time he's still towards purple. I can still intercept that blood ritual very easily. And little tricks like this, just like with a penetrating shot, if you can make it go away, it makes things a whole lot easier for your raid, and it lets you save cooldowns for the final part of the fight. Now, if your raid actually has really good DPS, there is a chance that you will not see a third boat phase. The way you can do this is you can bring any of these mobs down below 25%, and it should interrupt the final boat phase. Now, we never tried that, so I'm not confirming it, but apparently that is the cutoff for somebody going up onto the boat. So for us, we actually had to call a DPS stop during this final boat phase. You'll see that I'm just kind of standing around, not doing a whole lot, and letting the bosses wail on me while just avoiding Bob. You do not want to push phase 2, or whatever we want to call it, that final soft enrage phase, while only 2 of these bosses are up. It just becomes too much to deal with, and you want to have everybody down on the boat to burst during heroism on the first boss that you choose to kill. So all that being said, what happens sub 20%? They gain an ability called Iron Will, and each mob gains a fucking special ability. Admiral Garand is going to deploy turrets, Marak the Blooded gains Sanguine Strikes, and Enforcer Sorka gains Dark Hunt. Again, she's kind of irrelevant. Dark Hunt just does single target damage on a player. Now, whether you kill Marak or Garand first is entirely up to you. Marak does a fair amount of raid damage with Sanguine Strikes, so the tank that's tanking her should blow down cooldowns. And Garand puts down turrets, and I think she puts down more turrets quicker the longer she's alive in that phase. Now that's, again, not confirmed, but that's just what it seemed to us and why we decided to kill her first. So you see she put down a turret. When she's in melee range, the melee will be switching to her, but when she leaps away to put down a turret, the melee will switch to Marak and DPS that. I do not recommend having your melee kill the turrets. Don't have them do that. It's kind of a death trap in there for them. The flame bolts that the turrets cast hit really fucking hard. The ability that Marak the Blooded does, called Sanguine Strikes, that will do raid damage based on the damage it is doing to the tank. So I roll cooldowns. I will also go ahead and call for externals here, and then when I am out of cooldowns and we don't have that many externals available anymore, I will go ahead and call for a tank swap with our DK, and he will take the boss. Then I'm going to take Sorka, and just as has become tradition in all of my videos, I will die. So, and then I'll get battle res and I'll die again, because I like to party like that. So for this final phase, you really need your healing cooldowns to be up and on point. You need your DPS to be able to switch to the target that they can be most effective on. And all of the mechanics from before in the fight are still happening. That means penetrating shots, that means blood rituals, and all that shit you still need to look out for. You know what? Our mage actually just ice blocked a penetrating shot. So I take back what I said. I suppose ice block does actually remove it. My bad on that. So right there, like I said, we just tank swapped. You want to keep that Marak the Blooded damage down as much as possible to help out your healers. But when you do find something that works for your raid group, this part becomes a lot more manageable. Overall, this is a very good fight, and it is what I'll call a control fight. It really just depends more so on your ability as a raid to control a variety of combinations of mechanics rather than just being able to burst something down quick or being able to switch targets. This really combines everything and is a really good test before your raid moves further on in the instance. So as always, this has been a lot of fun to make. You get to watch me die for a second time, 2 for the price of 1 as usual. And another comment, I actually did pick up this weak aura here in the top left corner of my screen to show external tank cooldowns. It is a really good one, but I don't like that you have to scale down each individual element by itself. So I'm actually going to use Exorcist raid tools. They have a raid buff and cooldown tracker in there, so that one works a little bit better. So that will not be there in the next video. As always, guys, this has been Paul, and thank you for watching.